Hey guys, so for today's video, I'm sure the first thing you will notice is that I am doing a digital piece instead of a traditional piece. Originally, when I was developing the idea for this, I was intending to do it traditionally, but there was just something about the idea itself that I thought translated really well to digital art instead. So I ended up just going with that. This is very much the type of artwork that I like to do, and I wish I did it more. It has a kind of dark sci-fi feel, and that's one of my very favorite types of things to read and look at and draw. So I'm glad that this piece turned out the way that it did, because I'm actually really happy with the final result. And as you will probably see in this video, I am very out of practice in Photoshop. It has been a while since I've done a full piece in Photoshop. Probably the last time I did a full piece with the background and everything was in November. I believe it was November. And you can tell just by how rough it is for me working on this piece, how out of practice I am. But in the end, I am very glad that I ended up doing this in Photoshop, and I really do think that I should work in Photoshop more often, because I always like the finished results of my digital pieces. It's just doing it, because for me a lot of it is me being lazy and not really wanting to get out my tablet and opening Photoshop, which takes forever, and then dealing with the lag, and just like, it seems like a whole process, and it is, but sometimes I think I just need to get over that, because really this piece took about 3.5 hours, and I think the result is good, especially for this style of artwork. I think especially sci-fi looking artwork looks really good digitally, and the special effects that you can get. And as you'll see later on, I do some glow effects and some shadow effects that I really, really love doing in Photoshop, and I just haven't been able to figure out how to do that in traditional artwork yet, because I just haven't practiced that sort of thing yet. So for this piece, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how much I trusted my gut with it, and sometimes, me being the control freak that I am, I don't like to trust my gut. I don't like to just go with the flow. I really feel like I need to be in control at all times, and I need to know what exactly is going on and what's happening. And in this piece, I kind of just trusted myself a little more. I trusted my gut a little more in several areas, and I'm ultimately glad that I did. Like, the first area where I ended up trusting my gut was just the fact that I ended up doing it digitally. At first, I thought, oh, this would look really good digitally. And then I started to second guess myself, and I started to make excuses about why I didn't want to take out Photoshop and why it would be a whole thing. It would be a big process, and I just didn't want to do it. And I tried to make excuses, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized, I think taking the time to practice in Photoshop is good for me. And you can get entirely different results than you can in traditional art. And I think that's why I like it so much. It's just a different medium to me. It's not really it's still art. It's like the difference between watercolor and acrylics, or oil and acrylics, or whatever. It's just a different medium, and I was allowing myself to get out of practice, and I didn't like that. So even though this piece was very difficult in the idea that I was very out of practice, I am ultimately glad that I did it. Another thing that I sort of doubted myself on was the coloring, where I used a lot of gray, but I used a lot of bluish grays. And I was trying to get that metal feeling that I wanted from this robot. And I ultimately think that it turned out all right. The metal effects I'm not great at, but it comes with practice, and that's what this was. So I second guessed the coloring, but in the end I really, really like the way the coloring turns out, because it almost looks like those black and white photographs that have just one element of color on them, and in this, the elements of color are the blue in the eyes, and also the carnations that are coming out of the area where the heart should be and the area where the arm should be. I added a bit of blue to those as well. They're a lot more blue in those sort of light tones, even though they were technically intended to be white carnations. I just thought in the shadows they could look kind of bluish, and I would go with the overall look of the piece. And in the end, I do love the way the coloring turns out. So I think sometimes as artists, we tend to over criticize ourselves, especially when we're in the process of creating. And I think an important thing to remember is sometimes you just need to create. And you can do the judging yourself later, because I do think there is some benefit in actually criticizing your own artwork. And I know it's kind of a joke among people that aren't artists that all artists hate their own work. And I think there's some benefit to being judgmental of your own work, because at least you can see what you did wrong. Because if you're creating artwork and something is wrong and you can't see what's wrong, then that's a problem. But as an artist, if you can see what you're doing wrong, then you can fix it. So to some extent, I think it is a good thing to know when you're doing something wrong in your artwork. But I think the key is to do that after you're finished. Because if we criticize ourselves while we're inside the process of creating, we tend to get inside our own heads, and we are overly critical, and that negativity comes across in the artwork. And sometimes that's good. I mean, if you want your piece to come across as very negative, but to the same extent, negative could mean that it would just turn out bad. Bad art is a subjective term, because to different people, different things are considered art. And really, I don't think any art is bad. But when I say bad art, I mean to you, it looks like it's bad, which I've done before. And there might be people that like the art that I make that I consider bad. But in the end, if I don't like it, then that's what makes it bad. And I think we just need to learn to trust our guts more as artists, because when we get inside of our own heads and we freak out about, oh, this is not looking the way that I wanted it to when I started, then we stress about that, and the stress comes across in the artwork. Let me tell you, I know this from experience. So sometimes I think we just need to go with the flow of the artwork, let the artwork speak for itself, and then come back later and look at it and say, what did I do wrong? Because now I know what I did wrong and I can fix it the next time. But I enjoyed the process of creating this piece of artwork while I was in the moment. Now, near the end of this video here, you can see where I add glow effects. I haven't done it yet, but I will in a second. where I add glow effects and I use way too large of a brush, and my computer freaks out. It is really mad at me because I use a brush size that is 2300 or something like that. So don't do that with your airbrush brushes if your computer will have a fit about it, because mine did. So just a precaution, a warning. And something I also did with this piece that I haven't always done in my artwork in the past is I tried to add textures, and I tried to make the windows look kind of dirty and glazed over, and I tried to add texture to the robot and to the wall, and I'm trying to get better at textures. I normally do a lot of flat color, and that never really turns out the way that I want it to, but I think I'm slowly but surely getting better at textures, and ultimately I think this is one of the better digital pieces that I have done. So I am happy with the way this turned out. I hope you all enjoyed watching me create it, and that the topic I discussed in this video was useful. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.